We're going to go back almost 50 years to February 16th, 1974. And on that early evening, two pupils who used to attend this high school, Rodney McCoy and his high school sweetheart, Carla Walker, attended that dance. By all intents and purposes, everybody at that dance had a great time. Rodney and Carla had been together for quite some time at this point, and Carla would tell her friends about the possible future that she's seen with Rodney. He was a very popular student here at the high school. He was quarterback of the team, and she would tell her friends, we're going to go to college together. They both planned on attending Texas Tech, and who knows, I'm going to marry him and I want to have children. Two teenagers seemingly in love, attending a Valentine's Day dance. And afterwards, they linked up with a couple of their friends and they all decided to go cruising up and down Camp Bowie Boulevard. That was the street back in the days. The kids in the area here in Fort Worth would just go cruising up and down the street, just checking out their cars, checking out the boys, the girls, whatever. A night of teenage love. After a couple hours of cruising up and down the boulevard here, the kids stopped at a couple eateries, and the other couple, they make their way back home, and now it's just Rodney and Carla. Now on the way home, Carla had to use the bathroom, so they stopped right here, which used to be the Brunswick Ridgely bowling alley. Carla goes in there to use the bathroom, and Rodney is waiting for her in his car parked in this very parking lot right here. So she gets back from the restroom and, well, as many teenagers do, they started making out. And as they were in the process of maybe making out, taking a break or what have you, this person comes to the passenger side where Carla is sitting and just all of a sudden opens the door. As a matter of fact, it was so quick that Carla almost fell out of the car. And immediately Rodney's screaming like, "What are you doing?" And all of a sudden this guy has a gun. He points the gun right at Rodney and pulls the trigger, but the gun jams. So immediately he takes the gun and just starts gun whipping Rodney right in the face. Rodney screaming, Carla screaming, "What's going on?" And that man really tagged Rodney, because all of a sudden there's blood just streaming down Rodney's face. The blood is so blinding and thick he can't even see. And Carla is screaming. The man grabs Carla and takes her out of the car. And as Rodney is blacking out into unconsciousness, the last thing he remembers hearing is Carla screaming, "Go get my dad." And the man looks at Carla and says, "You're coming with me, sweetie, aren't you?" He takes her, throws her in his vehicle, and they disappear into the night. Now about this time, it's around midnight or so. When Rodney wakes up, he's absolutely covered in blood, and he's coming to his senses, and he's realizing what just happened. So remember, guys, 1974, nobody has a cell phone. That's an idea out of a sci-fi movie. And Carla didn't live very far from here, so he gets into the car, wipes the blood off of his face, and just goes tearing down through the streets of Fort Worth to her parents' house. And at that time, it was already almost 2 o'clock in the morning when he arrives, and he just kind of runs up through the curb on the house. Both Carla's parents were awake, and he just starts pounding on the door. They open the door, and they see Carla's boyfriend's face just caked with blood. And he's screaming, "They got her, they're gonna hurt her bad, they got her." And finally, he explains what happened, and the family calls 911. Over the next 3 days, a frantic family who cannot sleep is wondering where in God's name their daughter is. You got Fort Worth police searching this area where I'm walking at right now. They're searching it with cars, dogs, helicopters. And 50 years ago, this area looked quite a bit different. There's houses not very far from where I'm at right now over that hill. But back in the day, I'm guessing there were no houses because all of these homes are practically new. On February 20th, 2 officers with the Fort Worth Police Department are sent out to just search the Ben Brook Reservoir, that's it right in front of me, and to search all of the culverts in and around the Ben Brook Lake. A culvert basically looks like this. It's just a pipe that water comes out of, surrounded by some kind of a concrete type barrier. And on February 20th, 1974, 3 days after her abduction, they find the body of 17-year-old Carla Walker in a culvert. She was wearing the same dress that she was wearing the night of the prom. She had bruises and cuts all over her face and body. They found her bra was pushed up above her breast, and her dress had a bunch of tears in it. They found her underwear wadded up and thrown by the entrance of this culvert. They take her body to the coroner's office and they do an autopsy. And after that is complete and the report comes out, it is stated that she was strangled manually, meaning with his hands. She was raped, beaten, and absolutely tortured for 2 days. They estimate her death date February 19th. As the report came out, they're talking to her boyfriend, Rodney, to see exactly, if he can give them a description. And all he could tell was that the guy was about 5'10", white with brown hair. That's it. All he remembers is this guy just clobbering him with that gun. At the scene where the abduction occurred, detectives didn't find much for proof, except they found a clip or a magazine to a .22 caliber Ruger. That's not a very common gun. As a matter of fact, nowadays they don't make very many .22s at all. The only clue they have is this .22 caliber Ruger magazine. That's it. There was no fingerprints on Carla's body at all. There was some kind of DNA type fluid that was found on a piece of her bra strap, I believe. And at that time, of course, DNA technology, it's an idea and it's a thought, and they do believe that technology is there, but it's just not quite there yet. Remember, like I said, that magazine from that .22 caliber Ruger pistol, that's a rare gun, not a very popular gun. Not many people buy that gun or want to even use that gun. So the homicide detectives from the Fort Worth Police Department contacted ATF, and they said, hey, we need a list of every single person within the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex who has purchased a .22 caliber Ruger pistol. The ATF gives them the names And I don't know exactly how many names were on that list, but it was quite a few. But not too many to where they can start going to the addresses of every single person that when they bought that gun, they had to give them their driver's license and their information would be taken down. One of the names on that list was one Glenn Samuel McCurley. At that time, he was a truck driver, a family man, had kids, a wife, all that stuff. They did go and talk to him about this murder. So they went to his house and they said, hey, we're looking for a person that might be responsible for the murder of Carla Walker. We just want to get some information from you. He says, fine. On our list, it shows that you purchased this 22 caliber Ruger pistol. And he says, yes, I did, but it got stolen, I believe, out of my truck while I was fishing some time ago, maybe a few weeks before. And we don't really know, because none of us were there, if the detectives really looked at him, if they talked to his neighbors, if they called his job to see what kind of worker he was, if they talked to his wife. I don't know. But what I do know is that the detectives that spoke to him back then, he did not set off any red flags. So they tell him, okay, would you be willing to come down to the police department to submit to a polygraph test? He says, sure, whatever I can do to help in your investigation, I'm willing to do it. Cool. He goes down to the police department. They strap him in to do all the electrodes and all that. He passed with flying colors. Now, polygraph tests aren't foolproof. That's why they're not able to be submitted as evidence during a trial. But after that, they didn't pay him any mind. Again, they have absolutely no proof that he did it or anybody did it. And this case would go unsolved for almost 47 years. Over the years, there has been a few people that police felt they may possibly suspect of committing this atrocious murder. One was William Ted Wilhoit, who I believe that would have been the #1 suspect of the Fort Worth Police Department. However, that would all be evaporated when in 1977, a man comes in to confess to the murder. His name is Jimmy Dean Sasser. He's from Paris, Texas. And he goes in there and he says, I did it. You're looking for me. I killed her. And they say, okay, well, tell us what happened. And of course, a lot of times when you read these stories, police don't give out really much information, because when they do get somebody to confess, they want to be sure that's them, and they want to hear facts about the case or the crime scene that nobody would know. So he starts telling them the story of what he did, how he did it, where he took her, so forth and so on. And within 10 minutes, they knew that this guy wasn't the one that was responsible for this murder. Later on, he would go to recant his confession because, quote, he was depressed about his marriage ending. And believe it or not, you get a lot of these weirdos coming out of the woodwork just confessing the crimes because maybe sometimes they want some attention, or they're just nuts. They're just crazy, and that's it. And that murder totally tore up the Walker household. Carla's younger brother, Jim, I was reading an interview that he gave, I believe, to a local newspaper. And he said that as the time the murder occurred, he was 12 years old, that later on, growing up as a teenager, he would go jogging around the family home And he would always wonder when he would go to a supermarket, am I standing next to the killer of my sister? And other times when the family would have a garage sale, he would wonder, is this guy that murdered my sister buying stuff from my family's garage sale? And he's just looking at us and laughing. And who knows, we don't know if that occurred or not. And for years and years and years, Carla's mother and father both passing away, never ever finding justice for their daughter. So the case would become solved 47 years later. So basically what happened is this. There was a podcast that was started by somebody. Maybe they were a friend of Carla. I'm not exactly sure. So they started a podcast and they wanted to talk about crimes that occurred in Texas. The first case up was the Carla Walker case. And one of Carla's friends that went to school with her, they had gotten some pamphlets printed up, and they had went to a crime con that was going on in the Midwest. I think it was Indiana, maybe it was in Indianapolis, don't quote me. So this friend of Carla Walker went out to crime con and was just passing out the pamphlet, little booklet about her murder, about how it's not solved, maybe directions to the podcast. Maybe she's going up to any and everybody. So some producers from the network, the Oxygen Network, that network makes a lot of true crime shows, and they became interested. See, because there was a problem in this case and why it wasn't solved for so long. And this is shameful to admit it, and I wish something could be done about this. But a lot of times these crimes go unsolved because the testing for DNA is very expensive. Sometimes it's $20,000, sometimes it's $25,000, and nobody had the money to cough up 25 grand just to throw a shot in the dark, just a chance that maybe this DNA is somewhere in the system. So the producers of the Oxygen Network, they said, okay, we'll pay for the testing. Now, when you test DNA and you have like a little piece of fabric, that's it. You can't use it anymore. And they only had a very small piece of DNA that was on her bra strap. So they cut off the bra strap, send it in for testing, and they crossed their fingers, and it came back as a hit. Not an exact hit, but a hit on a family tree with the last name McCurley. Now, when detectives heard that name, I don't know if they knew right away, oh yeah, McCurley. They probably went through their file and they said, oh, there's a McCurley that we spoke to back in 1974, and he had purchased a .22 caliber Ruger. I don't know how good detectives make notes in their files, but obviously they didn't feel that he had anything to do with it, probably because that polygraph test. I'm in the general vicinity of where Carla Walker's body was found on February 20th of 1974. According to this map right here, her body was found about a mile east of Highway 377 at the bottom of Holiday Park. Well, I'm at the bottom of Holiday Park, and I'm a little bit further than a mile east of the 377, but I cannot find this culvert where her body was found. I've been at this park for quite a while now because, as you can see, the sun is setting, and it'll be completely dark in about an hour and change. And I always try to find a location, but I was unable to do so. But I'm pretty certain that I'm less than 1,000 yards away from the exact location of where her body was found. And like I said earlier, this place looks vastly different 50 years later. Somewhere out here. Somewhere out here. Fort Worth homicide detectives start making their way towards Mark's place because they want to make contact with Glenn Samuel McCurley. Now, before they do that, they go to the home and they start rummaging, taking trash out of their trash can because they're wanting to find any samples from the trash that can match the sample of the profile that they have on file. And they tested some of the contents of the trash, and of course it did match the criminal profile that they had back at the lab. They come back to the house again and they knock on the door and they say, "Hey, we wanted to talk to you about the Carla Walker murder." And his wife, Judy, is like, "Oh yeah, I remember that murder," because it was very, very big news back in 1974. Now at this time, Glenn Samuel McCurley is a 77-year-old decrepit, feeble man. So they start talking to the McCurleys, and one of the detectives tells them, "Hey, we want to get a sample from you just so we could eliminate you as a suspect." Now, McCurley gets a little hesitant about doing it, right? Because he knows that the jig is up. So I'm not sure what he said because I wasn't there, but eventually he did sign the paper to go ahead and let them swab his mouth to obtain a DNA sample. The detectives are just wanting to get this sample from him just to make the case airtight. Like, that's it. Like, yeah, we got the sample from the trash that matched the criminal sample, but we got this sample directly from him. So they take the sample, they go back, submit it to the lab, they test it, and it is, what do you know, it's an exact match. We got our killer. So the very next day, the fugitive task force from the Fort Worth Police Department comes to this home right here where that silver Lexus SUV is parked, and they knock on the door and they say, "Glenn Samuel McCurley, please place your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for the murder of Carla Walker." And his wife starts screaming, "No, my husband, no, he's supposed to have surgery. He's sick. He has cancer." Well, your husband might have cancer, but he did a very despicable thing back in 1974, and now he's finally gonna face justice.
Well, did anybody tell you what you're here for today? Okay. So let me just start by talking. We're not going to ask you anything until let me say some things first, okay? We're here because we are looking into the murder of Carla Walker. And we've done a very thorough investigation. We know what happened, and our evidence has led us to you, okay? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I know you're confused, but you shouldn't be, because we know what happened, okay? Now this is your opportunity to talk to us, to tell us your side, because I have bosses that I have to answer to, and what they want to know is that if you have any regret, if there's anything that you can tell us that doesn't paint a picture of you that makes you look like a monster. Because frankly, right now, when you're talking about a young girl that got murdered, we only have one side. We'd like to hear yours, okay? So that's why we're here today, okay? We know what happened, but we'd like to hear from you. If there's anything, hold on, okay? All right, before we go any further though, okay, I gotta read something to you just like in the movies. You have the right to remain silent and not make any statement at all, and any statement you make may be used against you at your trial. Any statement you make may be used as evidence against you in court. You have the right to have a lawyer present to advise you prior. Now, do you understand these rights as I've read them to you?
Yes.
I mean, is there any question that you have? Do you know what the word terminate means?
To get rid of, I guess.
To end, okay? So basically, I'm asking you if you're willing to waive your rights and talk about what we just discussed, or it's up to you. You know, you can either talk to me or not, but we'd really like to talk to you today.
Then did something to that girl?
Yes, sir.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? What?
That I did. I don't know. I've never seen the girl or anything. When was I supposed to have done this?
Okay, so are you willing to talk to me today about this case? I mean, I don't.
The other day when you came,
Okay, but are you willing to talk to us today? I mean, it's, like I said, it's your right to either speak with us or not. You know, but I gotta be clear on whether or not you're willing to talk.
well, I don't know. I don't know anything about this stuff.
Okay,
I had a 22 pistol
okay.
that had, it was a clip in it.
Mhm.
Well, I was fishing over on the, just south of me, over there on the river.
Mhm.
Been a long time ago. I don't even remember what date it was. I quit and come over by my pickup and everything. And I had that gun that I had, it's over, that I understood.
Ms. McCurley, can you look at that picture and just tell us for sure that you do not know who she is? You've not had any contact with her?
I've never seen her before. I don't know who she is. If she's standing right beside of me, you say it's, what's her name?
Carla Walker.
I've
So you've never met her before, never seen her?
I've never seen her, never met her,
Mhm.
never talked to her, I wouldn't know her
Mhm.
if she was standing beside of me. I mean, she was, and I took advantage of her, I guess, later on.
Now that makes sense.
And that's what we're.
Now you're getting us over the hump of the hard part here.
I choked her to death, I guess, and then, but I didn't beat her up
No.
and all that kind of crap.
How's that?
Oh, I'm guilty. And
Guilty of what?
I guess, well, that little girl,
You guilty of raping her and killing her?
I guess.
They take McCurley down to the police department, and they basically got this guy nailed to the wall with the amount of evidence they have, with his DNA matching what they found on the bra strap from almost 50 years ago. Now, I don't know how long it took, but as detectives are starting to question McCurley, he basically admits to the crime by basically saying that he had been drinking whiskey and beer, and he met a girl, and he guessed that he might have committed this crime, or maybe he got carried away, something like that. It's that same old nonsense when a murderer is being questioned by the police and they can't admit to what they've done because the crime is so vile. Even they have a problem readily admitting that they committed this crime. So, in a sense, they did get a confession out of McCurley. However, this guy decides to plead not guilty and go to trial. And of course, his lawyer is stating that the confession was coerced, all this and that. I've never heard of somebody murdering somebody and then just admitting it on video, and they just said, oh yeah, it was coerced. Yeah, nobody made him do anything. They got the DNA. This guy definitely committed the crime. Now, right before the trial ended, where you would have a jury deciding whether he was guilty or not guilty, which, I mean, there's really no point to a trial. This guy was guilty. I mean, what is it, 1 in a billion chance that it's somebody else's DNA? It's his DNA. So right before the trial ends, Glenn McCurley decides to go ahead and plead guilty to the crime. And as soon as he pled guilty, he was sentenced to life in prison. And currently he's at a Texas prison in New Boston, Texas. I think it's maybe 2 hours east of here. Finally, after about 50 years, justice was finally served, and her killer was brought to justice. And this is her grave right here. This girl was brutalized. I cannot imagine being kept alive for 2 days and all the disgusting things he did to her. No more pain. Okay, guys, I am out of here. I'm hitting the road onto the next crime scene. Rest in peace to Carla Walker. Okay, guys, signing out. I'll catch up with you on the next video. Peace out.